Hey everyone! I think you should be seeing and hearing me now. So if you're watching me right now and you can hear what I'm saying, write something in chat so I know that everything works. In the meantime, I'll get me a beer. Uh, Here in Israel, it's 10 p.m., so it's legit time to drink. Uh, hey everyone, how are you doing? So I can't see any. Oh, hey! Shachar is here. Hi, Shachar. Jamie. Hello, Jamie. Niffer. Hey, Niffer. Welcome. Oh, so many people here. That's fun. So, let's see. We are having this live stream where I'm going to try my best to answer as many world building questions as I can, and maybe some of you will join me with audio live here with me to just chat a bit about your world, or maybe you want to ask me question and be able to respond as well. So if that interests you, you can find a link to Discord probably in the description, and Niffer, who is a wonderful moderator, will help you. You just type in the general chat that you want to join, and she'll make sure that happens. Um, I can see your comments in the chat, so that means you're here, and that's good. Niffer, do tell me. You can either go live and tell me if there's someone here, or write in the chat. That's also great. Never noticed the flowers. Yes, that's Moran's. The flowers, and I'll bring it closer. So she's playing an elf in that LARP, and she made this. It's the most like you can see it over here. Here, you can see all the flowers, and there's little suns here. I'm showing off LARP gear that's not mine, but it's very very cute. She makes the best elf really, and now her face is her not her face, her crown is gonna decorate right here. Yes, yes they are, dear. Yes they are. um, so I stole your stuff. Um, we are gonna get some questions and some things I wanna share with you guys before we start actually taking questions. Is first, there's a video coming up on Thursday that's going to talk about war, specifically in world building. How can we incorporate it into our campaign, and how can we make it apparent to our players? And I won't spoil much for it because you'll see it on Thursday, but it's an interesting one and I'm excited for it. And second is big surprise. In about 15 days, starting December, I'm gonna be on Patreon, which means I'm gonna do a lot of weird shit on the internet, and you'll be able to see it and maybe possibly support it if you want. There are a lot of cool rewards, and I've been working really really hard with a lot of cool people to make the best content for you guys on Patreon. So you guys get to hear that first here on the live stream. 2 weeks from now, it's happening. Lastly, we have Nawarmo going on, which some of you may know is National World Building Month. It's like NaNoWriMo, but with world building. And we are trying to reach, some of us taking this challenge, trying to reach 50,000 words on the span of 30 days, which is difficult. And honestly, it's not going very well right now. Uh, yes. Oh, it's the Curious Owlbear. Hey, Ben. Was I not supposed to say your name? Oh, God. Welcome. And keep talking about take my money. I will gladly take your, like, yeah, I'll be happy to for any support that I can get. Anyways, So Snowarmo is very difficult, you guys. It's a very tough to write all these words for the world, and it's not going very well right now. I'm not sure if I'll reach 50,000. I might reach half of that, maybe. Um, but I guess the real goal of this month is to write as much as I can. And I don't think I would have done that without a challenge, without something to drive me to write every day. So as long as I write something, as small as this may be, every day it's progress, and that's what we're all about. So I think that now we can start with questions. So if you have any questions that you want me to answer, I am in the chat or on Discord. You know how to get me by now. But I have a few questions prepared by some of my friends. I just asked them, what should I talk about in my world building stream? And I'm like, yeah, we have questions for you. So here they are. The first question I got was, where should newbies start with their first world? Now, if you are a new GM and you want to write your own stuff, you want to create your own world, you don't want to use any of the pre-made things, you don't want to run an adventure, I get that. So I think the best thing you can start with is one location, as in a town, a small village. Develop it a little bit, just get to know some of the faces in it, some of the NPCs, and think about the what are your adventurers going to do there? What is going to be their quest or storyline? I do recommend for people that the start either the adventure building video, adventure writing video that I created. There's two in the series, or the Quest Hub series. There's also two of them that you can check out. And I think that with these videos, you can watch them and see how I think about it, and see if that works for you. You really don't need much to run a game. So, we don't need 50,000 words to run a game. I see there's questions in the chat. Let's see. What part of it isn't going well? Fine. Okay, so I have a lot of subjects ready to go, and I wrote about most of them. But sometimes I spend a lot of time on a certain subject because I feel like it's not enough, and I want to build more for it specifically. And instead of moving on to the next subject, I just try to think of more on the one. So I'll try to think of an example that won't spoil for players in my campaign. Okay, spirits are a big deal in my world, in my homebrew world. So I had this entry on spirits, and I wanted to create more individual creatures. So I sat down and I wrote a few, but instead of moving on to the next subject, I just sat down and like, well, what other spirits can exist? And it takes a while. So there's this jump between thinking and planning to actually writing, and how to jump between those two, and not to mention editing. If you're writing and editing at the same time, it's going to take a while. So I recommend editing only afterwards. And if you're writing for yourself, you probably don't need to edit that much. Next one. And edit to 200. Yeah, Shahar, 2,500 words is still a lot of words, and it's more than you would have, more you would have done otherwise probably, and that's progress. So if you ever go to actually run a campaign using that word, and I've seen those comments everywhere, from the Tales of Symphonia, world building around it, using some of the elements in the game. It's a wonderful game, by the way. If anyone here didn't play it and want to play some, it's like an old school RPG, very fun and very cool story, then you should check it out. And if you ever run a campaign there, Shahal, you already have so much prepared, Next one. Who asked the question? That specific question was asked by Yael, which plays in my campaign. Um, the spirits talk. Yeah, I'm stuck on that stage with my pantheon. I keep adding gods. I don't need this many, but I am compelled. Courtney, I understand that so much. Like, we want to cover all of it, right? We want to have the god for war, a god for I don't know, love, or the oceans and the underworld, and we just have want to have a complete pantheon, so it feels right. And then we just keep writing. So sometimes it's better to, I'm saying that, but I don't follow it, so it's advice that I should probably also take. But sometimes it's better to jump into the next subject and then go back to it, probably when something else inspires you to think of new gods or spirits in my case. So there is that. Let's see. No more questions in chat, so we'll jump into the next one that I have here prepared. The next one is also a question by Yael, who's running a campaign in Taldore, which is the setting for Critical Role, if some of you aren't familiar. And she asked me that she's working with a published setting, and she would like to know what should she add on top of what's already written. So, I think I don't have a Taldore campaign. I have the Wildmount setting over there. And I think those are pretty comprehensive. So when you talk about the regions of your world and the factions in large, you don't need to think much about new ones. You could, but you don't have to. What I often see that they don't add, and they do it on purpose, they leave that on purpose, is the relationships between some factions and specific individuals that you could use in your campaign. So the relationships between the factions, which sometimes some settings do write that, but not all of them, will help you create tension that will drive the story in your game. And by creating characters of your own in these factions that they already created, you will feel like you're owning what's going on. You will understand the power dynamic, and it will become easier to figure out what's going on in your game. So that's one thing that I'd try to focus on, not creating new factions or new cities or new regions, but rather taking what's already there and giving it my own touch, my own little creation within the world. That's what the settings allow you to do. They give you a much more detailed world with a lot less work of your own. The downside is that you didn't create all of it, but that's not really a downside if you enjoy the setting, I just like writing everything, so I don't use published settings as much, but I do like reading them for inspiration. Oh, Shahar has a question. As you saw on Facebook, I write about a world with a bitter history of racism that's still very present today. It's easy to imagine a utopia where there is no racism at all, but it's sometimes not realistic. How do you approach this subject in your games? So here's the thing. I'll divide my answer into two parts. First, every one of us is playing the game for different reasons, right? Some people that experience the bad side of racism in our world won't want to see it or handle it or get close to it in their games. People go to fantasy to experience something different, and we don't always want that in our game. But if we go and want to create a realistic world that imitates ours with the good and the bad, people sometimes unfortunately dislike whoever's different from them. And when you have different species in a world, that makes it easier to alienate them. So what I try to do is differentiate between nations. So I wouldn't say all humans hate tieflings, but there's this place in my campaign. There's a very very dark empire that's ruled. It's called Soli. It's ruled by an empress, and it's a very not it's a bit primitive in the way that it doesn't accept anyone who's not human, and even the humans, you have to be devout to be considered worthy, and it can get to some tough places, and they're usually the antagonist. So you can add that realm and make them the antagonist, or you could run a campaign there and try to bring in the underdog and give them a face, and try to make the campaign about the inhuman in the society, about the generally about the underdog and their experience from the society that's around them. So if you wanna bring that into the campaign, make sure you use individuals to portray the terrible sides of that. Or, you know, that's at least my take. You don't have to do it, but that's how I do it. Questions? I have a question here. Right. I already have that many pages. Like I have written a new campaign, I have 10 pages or 20 pages or whatnot. When should I start? The answer is now. If you're writing a campaign, if you're writing a world to run it, there shouldn't be a page cap to when you should start. If you wanna write for a campaign, then you probably already have what you need in there. Again, going back to my earlier recommendation for watching the adventure building and quest hubs and all that, really would help, I think, to take those pages, because you already have them, and build them into something that you can use. Because you probably already have that with 10 pages, unless you wrote 10 pages about... No, I mean, even if you wrote... I was going to say, even if you have 10 pages on nobility. But if you have 10 pages on nobility, you probably can run a very nice political campaign, right? So, another point. Write about what's interesting to you and make sure your campaign focuses on that. If you are excited about the things that you put at the table, your players will be excited to explore them. Shai, hey, welcome from work. It's good to have you here. So many people today. I'm really excited. Thanks, guys, for jumping by. So if you have any more questions, you can throw them here, throw them on Discord. Niffer, do we have anyone who is waiting to jump in? I'll drink my beer in the meantime. I'll take it as a no, or not yet. So I have another question. That's the last. Oh no, actually I have two more questions. Okay. The next question is, what's the minimum? And I think I answered that, kinda. But I'll try to elaborate a bit more. What's the minimum you need to run a campaign? So you need players. You can't run a campaign without players. You probably need one hub, one location that you don't even need to have that, but it's nice to have a village or a town that you can use, that the players can spend time in, and you can improvise more NPCs in if you need to, and one plot line that you think is interesting enough for them to explore. Maybe you can start the game by telling them, like in session 0, you are adventurers that are going to do, like, example for my campaign, you were hired to take care of the undead problem in Redwood. They have a certain problem, they have an issue with it. We need your help to take care of that and make Redwood safe again. And the characters already know that. I told them that before we ever started. They knew they needed to build characters that fit into that story. And then I already knew when we began that they are going after it. I don't have to worry about whether they want to do something else entirely. They just went there. And it made it easier for me to plan the first session. So they had some fight with undead. They met an NPC that already knew about it. And they were sent off to the swamplands to try and find the source of this undead corruption. Very generic, but it was fun. It was the first adventure, and there are, funnily enough, there are still things from the first adventure that they haven't yet realized, and they will eventually come back to bite their ass. But that's besides the point. Yeah, okay. Sorry, hi, I was eating when you asked. Alright. Hey, Ares is here! Hello, welcome aboard. We have a very nice Q&A with a lot of people, so thank you for jumping by. Okay. And the last question that I have here is what is a good way to create tension between factions? It's not exactly how it's written now, but between different factions in your world. And that's a very big question because there are many ways. Probably if their goals contradict each other, if the groups want different things, then it's going to be very easy to create tension between them, right? One group wants to slay the dragon, the other group wants to save the dragon, and conflict. We can make it more subtle. Maybe they're both looking for power, seeking power within the city. It's generally if one of them gets what they want, the other loses. That's the kind of situation that you want to create to really create tension between them. You could also, yeah, I think that's a general, that's a good rule, I think, rule of thumb. Yeah, sounds about right. So that's the questions I've prepared. Not a lot of them, but I got through them. And now let's see if you have anything for me in chat. I'm interested to hear about. You can also tell me about what the world that you're working with, or some of the things that you've realized as you world build, and maybe I could elaborate on that, or give you some, not feedback, but sympathy. Cheers. Okay, we have a question in chat. I have 2 questions in chat. Okay, thank you guys. How do you approach building a pantheon? Okay, that's a good question. Pantheons should convey some sort of a philosophy, I think. That it's the base of the pantheon. If we look at the Greek mythology, we see gods as beings who are very emotional. They're not distant, they're meddling, and they are fighting between them. So you want to create this tension between the gods. That's one thing to keep in mind. Other than that, there are many subjects, many not subjects, but what's the word I'm looking for? Like domains. Many domains that you can pick and choose from, right? Most pantheons will have some form of worship of the sun, right? Worlds have suns, so we worship the sun in some way. There's a god that represents that. But it could be the god of the sun, or it could be some other god that is also represented with the sun. So the choice that you make will go down to the society that you create. If you create a society that is worshipping the sun and, let's say, healing, perhaps because it gives life, then perhaps we could say that temples to the sun would be great structures outside, and symbols for healing. You know, it used to be, once was a snake, and in I don't remember which mythology that came from, but a snake could be the sun instead. If you create combinations of domains, you can create other interesting things, gods of art and let's see. I want to create something that's a bit twisted. What are two domains that we don't usually see together? Maybe let's create. Okay. For example, we could have. It's a very weird culture that we're going to create. A god of death and wine, or parties. That's a weird combination that we don't see, and I think we understand instinctively why we don't see it. But just for the sake of of this exercise, if we have a god that does both, how would rituals for the dead look like? What would parties look like? Maybe alcohol at all, wine at all, would be kept only for occasions when somebody dies. Maybe it's a society that celebrates death in a way, and it sees it as an opportunity to get out of this mortal shell and do something divine. I don't know, but the combination of domains that you choose will define many aspects of your society. So you could either choose a few domains and scrap them into one being, or start from the society and think, what kind of god would support that, or would justify that? I hope that answers your question. Next, we have Erez asking, would you absolutely avoid sketchy player characters? I usually want to play characters that are not necessarily good. So here's the thing. I usually avoid them, and I usually ask my players to avoid them, because it tends to end badly, but not necessarily because they're evil, but because bad characters tend not to be team players, right? In Dungeons and Dragons, evil is defined as taking care of yourself first, and whatever happens to anyone else, you don't mind because you're number one. That's the philosophy of evil in D&D. Alignment is that's a whole different. Let's not go there. But alignment is a bit weird. But let's say that we're working with it. So building a team player is more important because you want a character that works with the party. You don't want a character that goes to split out of the party all the time, creating this divide. It's one player is playing and the others are not, or the other way around. If that happens every once in a while, that's fine. If it tends to happen every session because they're a lone wolf, it won't work. If your character, as it is, and will easily antagonize the others, there's also the risk that the players, not the characters, will suffer your character because they know that there's a player there playing it and they don't want to kick him out. Otherwise, they would have kicked your character, to just kick them away like an NPC, like any other person. So as long as you create a character that is not antagonizing the other members of the party or goes very much directly against them or is a lone wolf, it's okay to have a character with gray morality. Outright evil, I don't know. I think it needs to be discussed. It needs to be more defined, I think. Shy, how have you thought about the future of your world, like other instances your party might play in the future campaign, like a prequel or a time skip? So I have had some experience with that. I ran a few one-shots that happened in the past, so historical one-shots. One of them, and when the empire fell, that was like 800 years ago, and they played through it and learned about the history of the world. And another one which happened 20 years before the campaign began, in a great war that kinda set the stage for the campaign in a way. And I do toy with some thoughts, because it's fun as game master to think, what if is the the premise of this entire hobby. So what would happen if they did that, or if they'll do that? So yes, the answer is, of course, always, all the time, as much as I can, while remaining sane, which is a bit redundant because sanity has left the building a long time ago. Going off areas, would you ever consider running an evil campaign, and would you feel like you need to build plan differently? Yes, than you would for a good campaign. So here's the thing. What Niffer you just said here is exactly what we need as GMs to create an evil campaign. If we have a group of individuals that can maybe not be considered friends, but that get along, we can run a game for them. If they all have the same twisted morality, or versions of morality that can contain the other twisted moralities around them, that's okay. And as for planning, I think an evil campaign would probably be, I don't know, it could be more chaotic, it could be, I have to think about it more. I don't think initially that I need to plan very differently, because I can still think of adventure hooks and plot hooks that bad characters would want. They'd simply compete with good factions that want to stop them. Usually if usually the D&D heroes fight with the, I don't know, holy, it's not like, would fight with the forces of good, then in this occasion the forces of good would go and fight them, and they'd have maybe minions or not, and that could be a very interesting experiment to try. Maybe a mini campaign can be a fun experiment. Maybe we do one of those one day. I have several questions. Okay, Niffer, if you have more questions, type them in. The Truckee wedding without at least 3 deaths is considered Yep. I'm reading the comments to get more questions. I feel like an evil character is, Curious Albert said, I feel like an evil character is playable if you have a strong bond to another PC. Yeah, it could be. That's true. Still, it could create some tensions off play. So it's on an individual basis, I'd say. Running session 0 in Eberron. Talon. Hi, Talon. How do I encourage players to create their backstories to fit the world without robbing them of their creative freedom? Oh, that's a good one. So one of the things, first, you're running a campaign in Eberron, which means you already have a world that's ready. If your players are not familiar with the world, then they might already feel a bit constrained, but if they are familiar with it, it could give them actually more opportunities. But regardless, running Eberron doesn't mean that you have every single place in the world mapped. So what I'd suggest to keep the players invested in the world is give them a little slice of the world for them that they can do with whatever they want. You could say, all right, you're one of these. There are families with a dragon mark in Eberron, right? Maybe one of them plays from that family. You have this piece of lore in the book for that family, but otherwise, this family is yours, man. Whatever you write, you tell that to the player. Whatever you write about that family, whatever you say about the family is true. It's yours. And some players will take that as an invitation to write more NPCs and think about what their family does, and that will give them the fuel they need to start their creative process. Because it can be a bit confusing if you just go and tell players you can play whatever you want, everything goes, whatever you want, and players can be baffled from that. But if you give them some limitations, it breeds creativity. There's a saying that goes like that, and it's right. Let's see. That was Talon's question. Here we are. I think about my campaigns daily. Right. That's a good thing to try. It's true. It is a good thing. Unless they keep you up at night. Courtney has a question. How do you handle city governments? What should be important to remember when building a government system? Okay. Governments are interesting in a sense that first there are plenty types of governments, right? I think there's in the Dungeon Master's Guide, there is a list of them, which is very comprehensive, and I really recommend it if you haven't seen it. So before you write one down, just figure out what is the ruling system like, and what else to keep. That's an interesting question. I'd say first, what is their here goes. Who are their enemies, right? Who are the biggest enemies of the government? We can define the government by defining the factions that are against them. So if we know who their enemy is, we can try to understand their motives and how to act as a faction, a living entity in your world. That's one. Second, we need to we can give the government some semblance of life by creating faces, and we can of course create the face of the ruler, like the king, but often the players the characters don't really meet them that often. Sometimes the best way to show the players your government is through characters in the middle ranks, like a certain lord or a baron. That can be very important for what's happening right now, but he is the face of the government in your setting, in the current events. You don't have to create the entire thing, but you need to have enough so you can define it within the scope of what's happening right now in your game. So faces, rivals, hardships. Aside from rivals, what are they struggling with? Whether it is the area that they're in, maybe they have inner politics. What is the stability of the said government? Is it likely to fall in the first crisis, or is it resolute and already held for a long time? Anything else I'd add? I think that's enough to get me started. I did make a video about settlements once, and I think settlements are really tied with the governments that rules them, so it might help you to check it out. And there's a collection of questions within that video that might spark some more ideas designing a good government. Okay, thanks Courtney for the question. Um, might be interesting planning a campaign that gradually goes evil. It might be errors, I think it could be, but it will require the players to be on board with it, right? You'll have to tell the players that this is where the campaign is going, otherwise it will be very difficult to degrade their moral, their character's moral, sense. So if the players are on board with it, it could be interesting to have these several corruption arcs for this group. Okay, time-related questions. Have you run multiple games in your world? Will you ever do so? Would you set them in different eras or the same time? I actually have two groups in the same campaign, and it's fun. I keep a calendar and I can tell which group is doing what and where, and I still haven't gotten to the point where it became problematic, but sometimes that one group hears about the deeds of the other. So, for example, the group that I started second, which are lower level, heard about the heroics of Auxilium that defeated the mighty white worm that haunted the not the roaring plateau. Oh, how do I not remember the name? It's not the Hungry Mountains. Plateau. Yeah, a mountain region in the world that was a great white worm. I brought the great worm back from third edition because 5e's ancient dragon was just not enough for this group. They're already high level, and it was epic. And they heard about it, and it was fun. So yes, why not? I'd say I encourage players, to do things, and then they hear about what the other party did. It can be fun. And when one of the groups destroys the world, maybe the other will find a way to save it. Okay. Do you ever purposely leave gaps in history for future games to fill out? How much do your players shape the history of your world? Yes, I do fill gaps. Obviously, when you have hundreds of years of history, you don't map them all out. So you can always find gaps, but leaving them on purpose. Well, here's one. Earlier in the stream, I said about I told you about the historical one shot in Iran with the Great War that happened 20 years ago. Thing is, I didn't know exactly how this war is going to end, as in, I didn't know which of the characters is going to survive it. So, or in what state. So, I knew more or less what is going on with the war. I had guidelines to how it's going to end in general. And when things went down, I learned about the characters that survived and those that didn't, and that became relevant later in the campaign. And it will still become relevant in the campaign. So that's interesting to just leave gaps in history, go and do some one shots to fill them, and then see how it affects the future. It could be a bit weird if your premise is not tight enough, because you might reach the situation where you create a ripple that should have already been affecting the campaign, but if you do choose like certain elements that are constant and certain elements that are not, you could still achieve this weird or fun state of like, I don't know what's going to happen, and some things are going to ripple outwards in the future again. So that's interesting. How do you handle mistakes in game? Niffer, thank you for all the questions. I really appreciate that. How do you handle mistakes in game? If you had written a piece of law and presented it wrong or left it out during a session, what happens? Usually, well, that depends. Did the players already act on it? If they already acted on it, I will try to change it so the version that I presented in the game is the correct one. If they didn't act on it, I would actually go back later. I'd send them a message. I'd go back in the next session and I'll tell them, hey guys, remember that I told you about this fact? It's actually like that. I mistook with the notes. And if it wasn't really a big deal already, if it wasn't really important that that certain bit of law is one way and not the other, the players won't mind more often than not. We can define the government by defining who goes against them. That's true. Shy, I think Shy. All right, that's software. That's well, it's a good advice for factions in general. That's true. It's just good advice. Who are their enemies is an angle I didn't think about using. Thank you for that. You're welcome. It's like I prepared them for the stream. Oh, you sneaky. So, okay, Curious Albert with a question. For time skips, I recommend thinking about how long it will take an area, world, or people to recover from the events of a previous campaign. Area, world, or people to recover from the events. I think that's an answer for the. I don't see the question here. It's good. It's not a question. So if you have a question in there that I missed, write it again. How often do you improvise and to what extent? Would you try to avoid improvising too much? Okay. So being a game master there's a balance between preparing and improvising. It can't be helped. I think that one of the most useful skills for game masters to develop is to know how to prepare in a way that helps them improvise. So it requires familiarity. It's like requires a bit of experience, and to know yourself, what you're good at improvising and what you're not so good at improvising, and what is the bare minimum that you need to improvise. Now, there is a lot of things that I can give you if you haven't done this before, like what works for me, what I see that works for others, and there is a sort of a guideline that most people agree with, that if you have this amount of prep, you will be fine. So I improvise a lot. I really do. I try to prepare the important bits, the thing that when it comes to the greater scheme of things, the plot lines, how the factions move, sometimes I like to plan certain events that might happen during the session, and then I can pull it out because I was prepared for this event, because I knew that, let's say, a group of merchants was interested in hiring the party, so I'd be able to pull out this group and put them into a scene where the party interacts with them. But sometimes I'll just, the character that is in this group, I might not plan it. I might improvise it on the spot, and maybe not. Maybe I will. It's for me, I think I do try to improvise less, but I am learning to improvise better. So I might prepare a name and maybe think about how they look like, but I won't prepare text or anything this extreme, unless it's a very, very important character that I really wanna get well. Sometimes I'll do even that, but it's just a matter of experience and getting to know myself and what I do better or not. I'm not shy. I'm not shy of improvising. I'm not afraid of improvising when I need to, and I think your players won't hold it against you if you improvise a lot of things, as long as most of it makes sense. So yeah, there's no right answer here. I hope that helps. That was kind of all over the place. Howling Peaks. Thank you, Moran. Thank you. It's the Howling Peaks. How could I forget? There's a Reddit story about players who did the flashback episode where there was suddenly a mountain near the city and the players were very concerned with what would happen to the mountain in the present. Yes. There's in that session in the war 20 years ago, there was a valley. There was not exactly a valley. There was well, the place where the war happened. The characters, I don't actually know if they've heard about it, but it was on the map. It was called the Roaring Plateau, but it wasn't a plateau when the fight happened there. And part of the events that transpired in that war tore the land and just sucked, not sucked, it just, cut the mountain and took it into another plane, and things became very, very weird and epic because it was like a one shot for they were levels 13 to 15, so they were kind of powerful, and they had, they fought like a dragon and a warlord and an angel, a corrupted angel, and each other at some point. That was a good one shot. The GM didn't want to admit his mistake, so he quick had to figure out a piece of history that explains the missing mountain. Why not? I mean, that's also fun, If you're up to it, if you want to explain why there's no mountain, sure. I don't think there's right or wrong here, right? Generally, it's better to keep things straight, because if you're not a very, very well, if you miss some parts, that you could create moments where players go back and say, wait, that doesn't really align with other things. It can break the suspense of disbelief and not reliability, but the not very simulated authenticity, I'm not sure, of your world. But generally, usually, it won't be harmed. It won't do harm to add a fact why there's no mountain if there's enough years passed and nobody really talked about it. Could be. Why not? Do you prepare songs or specific music choices for different areas of your world? Okay, I have this. Okay, write it down. That's a very good app. I use an app that's called Music Bee. It's music and that's insect that flies. Uh, and what I do with it is I add a lot of music to it, and I use a tag system to write what emotions or what situations I want to use this music for. So I can add tags like ominous, or mystery, or tension, or a town, or a tavern, and I add all these there, and then I can just type the situation or the emotion that I want to evoke, and usually something jumps, and I can put it and I can play it. But there are certain regions that I do prepare music for in advance. Specifically, one example that comes to mind is the Underdark. But it's not because we were going to the Underdark. It's more like I heard this cool, cool music from Skyrim, and I thought this is really cool. I want to get that music, and certain parts of it really worked well for me in the Underdark. So I'd say I just write Underdark here, and if there's ever a situation where we're in the Underdark or underground in another scenario, I can put it out and write it. I did prepare music for, like, when we ran a one shot, I did prepare music for most scenes, but that's because it's more streamlined. It's a bit more railroaded. When you're running a one shot, it's a bit inevitable. So the plus side is that you can pretty much prepare for prepare music for every scene because you know more or less what pool of scenes you might have. So that's a benefit, I guess. Music phone with doesn't some for the mountain city temple. Yep. Also YouTube has plenty of plays for this as well. That's true. If you wanna, if you have a certain playlist that you like, you can maybe throw it in here or in the comment or whatever, and people here could use it also. I believe in sharing music, uh, unless as long as it's on YouTube, and I want to get sued or anything, but you get my point. Don't steal music, but share your playlists. Uh, did you ever think to make an adventure that players can play without a GM on hand? I've heard about such a thing, but I've heard it exists. I didn't hear much about it. I think it would be interesting, but that would be a bit like a board game, no? Wouldn't it? Because any work that you'd put in advance would have to suffice. So essentially, you're creating a board game with role playing options, or not. Maybe not. Maybe there's a way to do it, like prepare situations, tell the like if you do this and that, go to page 5 and read whatever. That could work. I probably wouldn't do it because I enjoy GMing, and if I wrote something like that, I probably wouldn't be able to play it really. And if I wrote an adventure, I'd probably want to run it or have other people run it. I'm all for it. So it can be done. I probably won't do it. Definitely recommend Music B. It's good. Also, if you ask, be on the screen is Discord. Hey folks, does anyone have music? Yep, that's true. Our Discord is a wonderful resource for all game masters. I can't stress this enough. So if you're not there already, jump by. We have a very supportive community. A lot of people here in the chat are already from it, and thank you for joining in. It's a lot of fun. So my beer is getting warm. Nothing like warm beer. Oh. If you have any more questions, throw them in the chat. And yeah, I really like these conversations because I don't often get to speak with so many people, especially in these times. And it's fun to, just jump by and talk with other GMs and help if I can, or, talk about topics that I don't usually get to talk about. And I have I have some new ideas. The God example from earlier gave me some ideas to write later, so maybe afterwards, after the stream, I'll sit down and write a bit for my world. Gotta get those numbers for no warm-up. Can I check voice trap? You're not on Discord like you were last time. Oh. Let's do that. I see. Let's see how we can do that. Right. Can someone in the voice chat on Discord say something? Well, whenever. Niffer, if you're there, just...
Are you on, Aviad, are you on Discord voice chat that you can hear it?
Yeah, I can hear...
Just check.
Yep, I can hear you on stream, but
yeah, I'm working on talking right now.
And I think...
Aviad.
I think the chat... Okay, let's...
Aviad!
I think the stream can hear you, though. Can't they? Can you hear Niffer right now? Because that would be really funny. Tell me if you can hear her. If it's just me, If it's talking but you can't hear. Yeah. Okay. I actually can hear her. Uh, okay, so let's see if I can make it work. Because last time, what we did was, let's see. Because, okay, a little something about streaming. If you stream and you have a microphone attached, um, the streaming application will lock it to the stream. So I actually have two different devices. One one is the camera and one is the microphone down here. So I'm gonna try something and we'll see if it works. The stream here won't hear me for a few seconds. We'll see if it works. So yeah, bear with me. Some technical difficulties. Now you can hear me. Let's see if we can make this work here. Tell you what. Okay, last try. Voice and video. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Right. No way. Well, this is a bit. I think, unfortunately, the only way that I can do it right now is by going off stream and doing it again. I wasn't smart enough. I didn't remember to do it like last time. But what's happening right now is that my computer locked my streaming app locked the audio output from the microphone, so I can't have any other audio output for Discord. So what we usually do is we have a conversation on Discord from another microphone. I have it. I have a solution. But it will echo as what happens if I do that? Join voice. Okay, so okay, that's fair. So you can probably hear me now on Discord. I'm sorry guys that we're doing it like that, but you can hear me here on stream and people can hear me on Discord. But now, if Niffer will talk, don't talk Niffer, not yet, because it will echo here. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to mute you here. No, then I won't be able to hear you. Okay, unfortunately, it doesn't work right now. We'll do more questions over chat, and I'm sorry it didn't work out. That really sucks. I need to remember doing it next time and figure out, it's a bit weird. Streaming can be weird sometimes, but we'll get it next time. I'm sorry, Shai, that we didn't get to speak this time. I'll make it up to you next time. I promise. Yeah, but the thing is, if I use my phone, then they'd be able to hear me, but I can't be connected here to my stream, in my computer and my phone together. No, it won't work. Forget it. Won't happen this time, but we'll still take questions in chat. And I think we're gonna the stream is probably not gonna run for much longer time because it's been a little over an hour. There's been a lot of questions from you guys. Thank you for being so active. So if we have any more questions in the chat, I'll take them, and if not, we'll jump by again next week. I want to do a stream every week, and so we're going to try and have one on the 22nd as well at the same time. So if you're already here, then you know that next Sunday we're going to have one as well. We have a question from Michal. Right. Any idea on how to get players more excited, invested about your world? Okay. So there are a few ways that you can do that, I think. One is something we've discussed earlier, is give them more control. Give them a piece of their own, not their own piece of the world. If they have something that is their own, they are more likely to create in it, create around it. If you give them, if they're playing a monk and you're giving them their faction, their monastery that they learned in, it's yours. Whatever you write, whatever you say about it, is goes. And then they, if they write about it, they become more invested. And when something in the campaign happens regarding that temple, they will be more invested. That's one. Two, backstory. If they have a backstory, use it. If they don't have a backstory, make them write a backstory. I'm a bit spoiled, probably, with my players, but I usually practically sit down with them until we have something that I think is enough, and I usually make them write it down. It sounds very strict, but I need that to give them a better experience, because we are going to sit down for 3 or 4 hours every week or every other week, and we're gonna spend a lot of time together, and it only takes an hour or two to write, even a structure, a few bullets of a backstory. And it helps so much because it's this little prep that will carry on for months and months of fun. So backstory is very important. Using it will make them more invested. That's that. These are two of the biggest tips that I have, both regard to backstory. Generally, make it about them. But that's very general advice. Every player is different in that regard. Some players are not invested because of, it can vary. Some are not invested because they're easily distracted. Some are not invested because the style of play of the game doesn't really align with theirs. Maybe we have a player that really enjoys combat, really likes combat, but not so much other things, like maybe they don't like heavy role play as much. And when there's a session that does mainly that, they probably won't be as excited, and as a result, not as invested. You could ask them questions about their characters outside the session, because that could make them think about it, and they'll anticipate it, and they'll look forward to the session. Yeah, that's all I got for now. There are probably more ways. If you have more ideas in the chat, throw them in. I will be GMing a brand new campaign for Michal in 2 weeks, so I'm just going to pretend this question doesn't horrify me. Something I've been a huge fan of is when players ask, well, what does this NPC look like? What is this town that we just heard about like? Ask them to tell me. Yeah, when you ask them to tell you, it can really give the feeling that you're creating a story together, which is pretty much what you're doing, right? If you're playing a game, we often there's something I actually want to share with you. There's sometimes DMs are referred to as storytellers, and actually in the World of Darkness system that's over there, the GM, the game master, is called a storyteller, and there's a problem with that name. It's a bit controversial because the DM doesn't tell you the story. You're not sitting at the table and waiting for him to entertain you, for them to entertain you. You're taking an active part. You are creating a story together. So I think the name storyteller derives from the role, the body language, the tone, the ability to use the senses to really reach people and make them feel immersed in the situation. But you are telling a story together, so giving them, back to what Nifa said, giving them the ability to give a fact about the world will make them feel like they are there telling the story with you. And that's something that I wish more players were storytellers, you know? In the same vein, if the cleric paladin asks, hey, does this town have any symbols of or religious symbols in general? The best answer is in your head. It does now. Yes, if they're looking for it, let them have it. If it doesn't hurt your setting, your game, that something will be there, let them have it. If they are currently in combat, and one of them, that's an example, I don't remember where it's from, and one of them asked if there's a chandelier in the room, and you see no reason why there shouldn't be, there is a chandelier now, because they have an idea to do something cool with it. So let them. Otherwise, let the PCs give you hints towards what interests them. Absolutely. Yes. Definitely. Well, it's been way over an hour. My throat is already. I'll drink some beer first. Oh, warm beer. Gotta love that. I got it from On the Shoulders of Dwarves, probably. On the Shoulders of Dwarves is a good podcast. They have English episodes as well. Check them out. That's it for this stream. Thank you so much for joining me. I will be here next week, same time. If you haven't joined us on Discord, feel free to do it now. And remember that you are awesome. Keep being awesome. And I'll see you beyond the screen. Bye.